Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. Hey everyone, and welcome to Raising Parents, the Parenting Science Insights podcast, produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element, with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm your host, Dina Sargeant. Now, let's get started. Hey guys, welcome back to the Parenting Podcast. Today we're talking about screen time and screen time in terms of how much is too much? Is there a such thing, or is it just something that's just going to come and go? To talk about this with our topic is Athina Saraya. How are you today?
Hi, I'm good. Everything is fine here. How are you there?
Everything is fine here too. Yeah, it's the middle of the afternoon and yeah, I'm quite ready for the day to end.
Nice to hear that.
So would you mind talking a bit about yourself and what you do and what you studied and something similar to that?
Of course. Okay, so my study background is psychology. I'm having a bachelor degree of a psychology and also my master degree in psychology as well, especially for children development. Actually, all of human development, but then I focus on how children develop their self. And then currently, I'm a lecturer in psychology department at Hasanuddin University in Makassar, Indonesia, and I'm also doing a practice for children, like their need of assessment, psychological assessment. So I am also a children practitioner as well.
Oh wow. So how long have you been in talking talking about psychology? A lecturer.
Okay, as a lecturer, I just started it the end of last year, December. So it's just like 5 months. It has been 5 months.
Oh wow.
But then as a children practitioner, it has been for 3 years.
Wow, that's and how do you like it? Is it good?
Actually, sometimes it's so difficult task because understanding children is something unpredictable, because every children is unique. So sometimes we want to suggest a parent to do this for their child, but then we need to understand that every child need is different, so we cannot generalize the parenting style, or what do you call, how to raise a child. Yeah.
No, that's definitely true. I feel like everyone has a different opinion as to how a child is supposed to be raised, and adding the impact of culture as well. I think that definitely has some influence as to how a child is supposed to be raised.
Yes, true, because all family has their own value.
Exactly. No, exactly. So, talking about today, I think we're talking about screen time in sort of parenting aspect. How would you define screen time essentially?
Okay, screen time actually it refers to spend time engaging in visual-based technology. So, for example, video games, when you use computer, tablets, smartphones, or similar devices are also included in screen time. And some activities that engage with screen time is like doing online gaming, offline gaming, communicating via digital phone. Meanwhile, we need to understand that auditory activities such as talking to the phone or listening to music is not count as screen time. And however, we need also to understand and recognize that there is also a term called second-hand screen time, which is referred to a passive screen time viewing.
Okay. So what is secondhand screen time?
It's like, okay, when I'm as an adult and I have children beside me, I use my phone and then the children beside me show what I'm viewing.
Okay.
So it is kind of indirectly viewing some things on a screens or TV. For example, like I watch my own TV show, it's not suitable for children, but then they see what I'm viewing on that particular time. So it refers to passive viewing screen time, or also called secondhand screen time.
Ah, okay, that makes sense. That actually is so that's is that separate from screen time, or is that still counted as screen time?
That also counted as screen time, but sometimes we forget that there is children around us and they can involve in our activities. Yeah, so we forget to filter what we are watching when we are around the kids. Meanwhile, it's something to
Mhm.
take a concern because they can absorb anything from around their environment.
No, that's totally true.
Yeah.
So talking a bit more about you and um what your screen time is, we're going to do a sort of quick fire questions, like a little icebreaker as to who you
Yes.
are. Yeah. So there's five different topics. I was going to ask you the first thing that comes to mind. So currently, what's your favorite book?
My favorite book is everything that related to self improvement because recently I have an insight that I need to love myself more, because when I love myself more, I can share more to people. I have uh like long term goals that, okay, when people ask me what kind of dream job do you have, I don't have a particular professional job description to answer, because as long as I can share things to people, I feel that I am valued. I uh, I have something that I can see a positive side from myself, and for doing that, I cannot give something if I don't have it for my own
Mhm.
self. I can share things if I own it. So recently, I just learned to how to love myself more, so I can I can share the positivity to people.
That's really good. Do you have any book recommendations that you may have read that have sort of helped in this journey that you've gone on?
For now, I'm reading about altruism, but I forgot who is the author.
No, that's totally fine. So that's definitely a genre that's really popular and
Yeah.
yeah, so of course, how about your favorite movie?
My favorite movie is everything that can make me laugh. So kind of family comedies like Cheaper by the Dozen, if you know that movie.
Yep.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite movie.
Wow, that's such a funny movie. I love that movie. Is it
Yeah,
the one with Hilary Duff in it, I think?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
true.
Yeah. I like the first one more than I like the second one.
The second one, yeah,
Yeah.
different actors.
Yeah, exactly. How about your favorite podcast?
My favorite podcast, actually, I'm listening to any podcast, politics, relationship, parenting. Yeah, so I'm not limiting myself to some topics. I just like listening to all kind of podcasts.
Do you have one in particular that you're listening to at the moment?
Um, yeah, I have one of podcast that I usually listen, but then the one who created the podcast is from Indonesia. His name is Arif Muhammad. He provide a lot of knowledge, daily knowledge.
Okay. Wow. That's definitely well, we'll have to look that one up or and definitely have a view of it somewhere.
Yeah.
How about a famous role model or a person that you admire?
The famous role model is, okay, in Indonesia we have a hero, and his name is, it's not a hero hero superhero. He's one of our former president. His name is Professor Habibi, and yeah, I admire him because he shows that even though he go abroad a lot, he absorb knowledge from other countries a lot. He travels a lot to gain experience, but he never forget where he comes. So he always contributes to our nation, to our country. That's why I admire him.
No, I really like that. I really like how worldly he is. He sounds, at least, for sure.
Yeah.
How about a course that you have completed?
A course that I have completed because I am more concerned towards children, so I completed a certification for Montessori educator.
Okay, and what does that course talk about? What is the focus of that course?
So Montessori is one of learning method in children. It's a worldwide method that used in a lot of schools that allows children to learn from observation, from exploration. We are not limiting them to learn something just from our mouth, verbally, from our what do you call it? From our board of what we write on the board, but then we let them to explore all of the objects around them. So yeah, it can be applied not only in learning methods but also in parenting style.
Okay, wow. So is that similar to going back to what we were talking about before when it comes to secondhand viewing? Is that definitely something that is similar to what you were talking about?
Um, Not really actually, because being a Montessori educator or being a Montessori parents, it means that you are ready to assist your children anytime for their learning purpose.
Okay. Okay, so now that we're talking a bit more about the going into screen time and what we were a whole reason is for the episode today. Um, how would you define screen time in the perspective of a child?
For like, do you
For
mean?
yeah, for a child, how would you, since we've spoken about how it would be defined as a parent, how would
Mm-hmm.
it be defined in the terms of a child in a way that a child's screen time is?
Okay, so are we talking about what the do's and don'ts of children
Um,
using screen time?
I think eventually, but I think we're just focusing on the definition of what screen
The
time is.
definition of
Yeah.
screen time. Yeah, the screen time is our time spent to engage with any screen activities like scrolling social media, watching TVs, show, or see a YouTube channel, do online gaming, etc. That is screen time.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
sometimes, yeah.
So, how, what role does the parent play in a child's screen behavior?
Okay, first time the role that the parents play in screen time behavior is we need to remember as a parent we are role modeling the screen time behavior. We need to remember that children will tend to follow our behavior rather than listening to our advices because they are a great imitators. So the parents' interaction with screen should be concerned. For instance, how we role model our screen time is we need to ask our own self when we play with our phone, when we scroll through social media, or when we do virtual meeting, are we ignoring them when they are talking to us? Yet we should not misunderstand the examples that I mentioned earlier, that we are forbid to focus on our virtual meetings or when we work to some documents, because children also need to learn that there is time when we need to connect with our family and there is time that we need to spare for other responsibility outside from home. And it can be taught by showing them a simple timetable. For example, okay, son, from morning to 12 o'clock until your lunchtime, I will do my work. So, will you excuse me to focus on my laptop while you're doing other activities by your own? But when they are talking to us, then what we need to do? Yeah, when they're talking to us, sometimes we can give them a gesture, like a code to them that, okay, I need to focus first, later I will go back to you. And when there is a break from our work, we can go to them and tell them, I'm sorry because earlier I ignore you, but that doesn't mean that I don't want to talk to you, but I need to focus on my work because it was my working schedule. So what do you want to talk to me? And then we can replace that time.
Okay.
Yeah. And also the other role that have as a parent is we need to remember that we are the rule makers for the screen time. We are the one who are responsible of the do's and don'ts. We are the negotiator of the rules. It what has been on list is not fit with the children's need and comfort. And last thing, we are also the supervisor for the screen time access.
Mhm. So
Yeah.
how do we so the first part that we were talking about, it definitely sounds like you're learning from the behavior that so children are learning from the behavior that the parents are putting in
Yeah.
place. So how would you minimize that? Especially when going out of lockdown, there's a lot of working from home parents, and parents are always on their laptops and working. How would you, in your opinion, how would you sort of define, like separate the time in order to
Time
talk
for
to your
our own
child?
self.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
with the screen and because the chat can imitate our behavior, right?
Yes.
Um, yeah, before the bedtime you can have like a pillow talk with the children to explain to them that nowadays we are moving into digital era. Sometimes I need to work with my phone and I need to work with my computer, and I need you to understand that it is important for our living because I make money from work, and you can buy food, you can buy clothes, you can buy toys if I work. And that's how I work. And you can show them how you work. For example, if you are doing a Zoom meeting, or for example like this, I'm doing a podcast recording. Before we start the Zoom meeting, we can have them in our lab and we can show them, okay, you see, now I am doing online meeting, so I will meet my friends virtually, I can see them on the screen and I will talk about work. But actually this is not suitable for you because it's hard for you to understand, but you will understand that when you are reaching older age. And if you want to talk about my work, I can explain to you with an easy word, and we can do that before we sleep tomorrow, something like that. So they understand that, okay, my parent has their own time to do their work, and I can do other activities, other alternatives, rather than disturbing my parents or following them into their work. Yeah, something like that. So
Mhm.
for me, it's important to explain to our parents what is our to our kids. Sorry, what is our job exactly? For me, for example, I'm not a parent yet, but if I have a kid one day and I'm going to explain to my kids what is my job, I will tell them, okay, you attend school every day, right? And you have a teacher inside your classroom. Okay, I am also a teacher, I'm an educator, but for older age, for like example your cousins, your older cousins, yeah, that age, I'm teaching them. So yeah, they will understand, okay, my mom is a teacher, sometimes they need to meet the students through laptop, sometimes then they need to call the students through the phone, and that's all right.
Okay. How would you be when you're working, for example, and this is completely from a scientific point of view, that way that you studied it. Um, how would you sort of make sure that the child is not imitating you directly? For example, like if you're working on your laptop, the amount of hours that you do work, and but you don't want your child to be on the computer or on technology for that amount of time. How would you how do you stop that?
Okay, so how we stop our child when we are doing work and they disturb us?
I think it's more of like when a child is on
Mm-hmm.
the technology for the same amount of time that we are, there's not a how do you sort of tell them that they don't need to be on technology for that long.
Okay, so we
Yeah.
are talking about the duration.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. You mentioned earlier that how much is too much, right?
Yep.
Screen time duration for children. Actually, if it's for infant under 2 years, the appropriate duration is actually for under 2 years. We should not allowing them to access screen time, except for video calling for their sake of cognitive development. But then, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, etc. For the following age, we can limit them into just 30 minutes to an hour duration of screen time, and we can help them to understand the duration by setting a simple reminder. For example, like, okay, do you have an hour of screen time? Let's set the alarm together. When the alarm rings, it's time for you to stop. Because actually nowadays we cannot stop them from accessing technology actually for digital devices, because nowadays they are they're expected to operate technology. It's a mandatory needs
Hmm.
currently. So yeah, we cannot limit them into accessing technology, like cannot accessing at all, but then we can limit them.
So
So yeah.
would you separate educational use with recreation use for a child?
Yes, of course, because actually for recreation they need to understand that this is my time to entertain myself, but then I also have time to access education. They need to understand a clear schedule when they need to attend school, when they need to do homework, and sometimes it needs digital devices. That's all right, but it's under supervised. And then they need to understand there is free time for me to use digital devices, and the parents need to tell them when is the exact time. For example, okay, after nap time you can access screen time for an hour, let's set the alarm together. But then during mealtime, no accessing social media at all, not accessing tablets at all. And we need to strict with that rule. Sometimes they might cry, they might scream, but yeah, that is the challenge.
Yeah, you were talking about the cognitive development that a child
Okay.
has. What is the development that is positive or negative when it comes to the amount of screen time?
Okay, some researchers also tell that education device can improve their mathematics and science knowledge, because it gives additional perspective on learning purposes. And also some study shows that some of the gamers can improve their multitasking skill, but not all of the gamers. Okay, and we need to take in mind that if you're talking about cognitive impact, we have the positive sides and also the negative sides. So what is the negative sides? For children under 2 years, it's hard for them to transforming two-dimensional objects into real forms. And sometimes the entertaining content on the digital devices can offer overload stimulations, because it gives us like eye-catching content, a very bright colors, a very noisy sound, and it will make them hard to focus on real situation, which is less eye-catching, or we can
Okay.
say mundane conditions.
Okay. So just to sort of dumb it down for everyone, for me as well, what exactly is cognitive development?
Cognitive development is everything that involve our brain activities. We are talking about memory, we are talking about intelligence, we are talking about attention. That is the scope of cognitive aspect.
Okay. So we're talking about the positives and negatives. What are some, what factors lead to positive effects of screen time, for example?
Okay. For example, they okay, we can see that some of the kids can expand their vocabulary through YouTube or
Mhm.
through TV shows. But then we need to take notes that it can be reached if we provide the educational content together with a real interaction. So we are not just making them a passive observer of the shows, but we also make them engage with real discussion. So through that some of activities, they will develop their language development, because we cannot deny that sometimes we have a small scope of vocabulary when we talk with our children, but then when they watch YouTube they can get more exposure towards another perspective of vocabularies that we are not using at home, and that will expand their language development.
Okay. How would you limit the language? Because I know, especially on social media, there's a lot of language that you don't want your child to learn. How
Yeah,
how do you sort of filter that, or can you even filter what they learn?
that is totally true. Actually, it's hard to filter it 100% because we cannot be 24 per 7 beside our kids. But then there is the importance of having a discussion about what we has been doing for the whole day. So before they have a screen time, we need to ask, what do you want to do on your TV? What do you want to do on your tablet? What things do you want to watch? And then we need to do the co-viewing. What they are really watching. Is it really true that they're saying this, they want to watch this, and they really watch the content that they mentioned before? And then after that, we need to ask them, what do you think about what you has seen on the TV? And we can give also our own perspective, so we learn what is their uh, how they perceive the world, and they can learn how is our value. We can have a discussion about that, and by having a discussion you can understand, okay, they learn this kind of value, they might learn this kind of behavior, they might learn this kind of language. We can give them a definition of that language if we think that that is a bad language to talk, and then we need to give them an understanding perspective that why we think it's a bad word, why we
Mhm.
think it's a bad thing to communicate when you talk with other people.
So it's important to have that conversation with your child
Yeah,
then.
yeah, to understand what they have learned and to understand what is their value.
Mhm. So what about we're talking about the co-viewing with your child. Is it also important to watch what they watch before they're watching it? So sort of, for example, you're on YouTube and there's a YouTube channel that they like watching.
Mm-hmm.
It's important, I think, so in my opinion, I think it would be important for a parent to watch that channel first in order to really understand what that account is about and the morals and the values that that account holds. Is that something that you would recommend doing for any parent as well?
Yes, I'm agree with you, totally agree, but sometimes we don't have time for that.
That's
Right?
true. That's true.
Yeah. So, if you don't have time for that, the discussion that I mentioned earlier is really important for the post viewing of the content. So, it's okay sometimes if we are busy and we don't have time to do the pre watching before the kids watching it, but we can always have the active involvement during their screen time. For example, like for kids we can ask them simple question like what color is the sky, or what shape is that. It can be practiced, but we can have a bigger question like, what do you think if there is no tree over there? What do you think if that animals is not being fed by the caretaker? How do
Mhm.
you think of that? Something like that. So yeah, it can be practiced.
Okay, so with the regulating of what a child watches, also with the time limit that the child watches, I know that there's a lot of um, so the TV has a time limit as to what can be watched for how long. Like for example, you set a password on there that sort of
Yes.
blocks everything. How is that really needed in your opinion, or is it just something that um, it loses the trust in the child.
Sometimes we need that because kids are not always cooperate with us. So if we tell them, for example, okay, let's set the alarm together. If the stopwatch rings, it's time for you to stop. They might scream out loud, no, I still want to watch this. I still want to scroll on my phone. I still want to play my games. So setting an automatic turn off for TV, for example, sometimes it's needed. But I would like to recommend better to discuss the things and to understand why they still want to engage with activities from the screen, so we can understand, okay, they found it fun for them to play games, so what can I offer other options for them to have a fun activities? Can I give them free exploration on the garden, for example, or let them water the plants? Is it also fun? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because when I was growing up, not me, but my friends' parents, they used to have that time blocking on their phone about how long they could be on social media for. And it's funny because kids are smart and they definitely find a way
Yeah,
around it. And
that's
it
definitely true.
to me, I think it's kind of pointless in a way because one, you lose, in my opinion, you definitely lose the trust between a parent and a child. And you don't have that. It sort of means that, sort of signifies that you don't trust your child to sort of make good decisions.
Yes, true. It can affect the trust between the parents and the child. So if you want to set like an automatic clock for your phone or for your tablets, you can tell them after setting the alarm together, if you don't want to stop it, when the alarm rings, it will automatically lock itself and I will take the tablets. I will keep it in a storage where it should be kept.
Okay.
So it is important for children to know that phone, computers should be kept in their place. It shouldn't be put everywhere. So from that kind of behavior, they can learn, okay, there is a separate time for entertainment and to connect between entertainment and connection to our family time.
Okay. Doesn't that, in a way, lose the responsibility of a child? Like, in my opinion, like from what I know, kind of feel like it sort of doesn't have the say. It doesn't give the child the responsibility to decide, for them to decide when enough is enough. Because a parent, like you said earlier, like a parent isn't always going to be there.
Yeah, true. That is why I said that it is really important to listen why they still want to engage with the phone. What they feel when they still want to watch the YouTube. They feel it, for example, fun, or they feel happy when they watch it. Why they feel happy? It's important to understand the why behind everything. And of course, it's not an easy process. It takes time because sometimes children have trouble to communicate their feeling. They are having trouble to express their emotion because not because they are having a disorder or something, but because of their development they still have the lack capacity of expressing their emotion and their feelings. So they can only say no, or they can only say I just want it because I want it. But yeah, we can give them some option of our simple common sense why they still wanna enjoy the TV show, for example. Because you like it, why do you like it? Because you can laugh? Okay, let's see other activities that we can laugh together with. How about if we play Play-Doh together and then we make different emotions? How about that?
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good alternative in ways of um, having that communication with your child. And I think with the different ages as well. I mean, I know we're talking about cognitive development, but sort of talking about the social and emotional development, and
Yes.
especially older children. Like I know. there's a lot children now create connection with friends through video games and social media. How do you balance that? Or rather, how do you view that sort of connection that can be made?
Yeah, that is totally true because online gaming nowadays is very creative. For example, like Minecraft, if you know that kind of game, you can have a connection through your larger social communities just by playing that kind of game. But we need to understand that recent studies show that screen time is resulting in lack of quality interaction between children and other family. If this routinely practiced at home, this behavior potentially applies in larger social environment. It is can easily observe that when people are gathered together outside in a cafe or in a restaurant, you can see that people are tend to focus on their own smartphones rather than having a real communication. Be in touch with social connection through internet is fine, but for children, the best form of maintaining relationship is by video call, especially for them who is still under 2 years old, because they can learn a holistic communication in a video, since they can see the facial expression during interaction. Voice note also helps them to understand tone when talking. So yeah, for children, if they want to talk with, for example, their auntie or their grandparents, you can encourage them to use voice note instead of just typing things.
Okay. So how would you do that in like older children, for example, teenagers? And I know that you can sort of audio chat through video games and through other social platforms like Discord, for example. Is that enough to build that social or emotional connect like development, or would you need to sort of, or is that damaging in some sort of way?
Okay, for a teenager, it's really hard to limit them on using smartphones, especially because we cannot forbid teenagers to develop their own value as they are start to learn how to connect through my social life, how I have my own perspective. Now I have my own mindset, I have my own value, and sometimes the value is different from the parents' value. It's very common for teenagers, and it's easier to control children's interaction through internet rather than teenagers. So for teenagers, my suggestion is, okay, if you have time from your, if you have friends from your online gaming, why don't you invite your friend to have a dinner with us so we can have a real conversation with them. I think it can be fine. Would you like to arrange what is our menu for dinner? Yeah, involve them in real life communication. For example, like having a dinner together or playing a real toys together is important for them and can encourage them to have a real interaction rather than just virtual communication.
Okay. Um, so how would you deal with the situation of telling a child enough is enough being on the devices that they're on? Would you take the devices away, or would you just simply expect them to know that they've had enough time on it?
For me, I need to be patient to take the phone away if they don't want to stop with it,
Hmm.
because sometimes we just want to give them phone to instantly calm them down
Yep.
because they crying out loud in the middle of the crowd, and we just afraid that we will disturb others people convenient of the situation. So for me, it can be overwhelming for the parents, and it can be a frustrating situation for us as an adult. But then if we don't have a strong value of taking the phone, just simply take the phone, take them from their hand, they will learn nothing.
Hmm.
But if we want to spare our time to listen to them, to allow them to express their emotion. It's okay to cry. If you want to cry now, cry it out loud. I can understand that you're sad, that you're mad at me because you want to still play with your phone and I want to take it away right now. But you also need to understand that I do it because of, okay, you can explain why you do that. What
Okay.
is your purpose? And give them time to talk for themselves. We need to also to listen to them if we want them to listen to us.
I think that's a really good point. I think that's really important, especially when developing that relationship between the parent and the child, having that sort of I'm listening because I want to listen, not because I have an answer to that to what your
Yeah,
situation is.
yes.
As we already know, screen time does give a lot of positive and negative effects on a child's development. What would you suggest parents need to practice to maximize the positives of screen time?
Okay, the first thing is we can do co-viewing and involve in their using to assist them as an active participant. So we can ask them regarding what they feel like, what color is the flower, but we can also give them a more complex question. For example, like what is your opinion if the parents yelling on the kid? How would they feel? Or how would you feel if I do that to you? And what is your opinion? What should the parent do? That is for the older age. But then, yeah, we should understand when we communicate with children what to say that is appropriate with their age. And then the second thing is we can optimize the internet feature. For example, YouTube now have YouTube Kids feature. But then even though they already filtered the channel, don't forget to double check the
Mhm.
content, and then we can build a culture of balanced play. There is time for real toys and digital entertainment. Real toy doesn't always to be expensive. Sometimes letting them to explore objects around them is the cheapest way, and it will benefit their cognitive skill. And last thing is we need to monitor the content. There is currently some activities that requires active response from the user, the so-called digital book. So for example, like when the child read that digital book and they touch it, it will give touch effect or sound effect. So yeah, uh, the real book is better than the digital book, but then sometimes we don't have option because they just want to read the digital book, and that's okay as long as we supervise the using.
Okay, so it's definitely sounds like there would be some things to have on the go. So going out or things like that, um, what other alternatives do you have rather than bringing just a mobile device to entertain a child?
Talking to them,
Mhm.
children really love talking actually, but then we found it now that they are tend to focus on their smartphones rather than talk to us because we don't let them talk to us.
Mhm.
We need to spend our time to simply listen to them. It might not be an easy process because understanding them is a complex situation since they are still lacking on vocabularies. But then you can talk to them. You can play with them. So, for example, when you're on the car together, rather than see a YouTube, watch YouTube to kill the time, to kill the duration on the way to our destination, we can ask them like, okay, what do you see over there? What do you think about the weather, for example?
Okay. I think that's a really important. I think that's something that's overlooked as well. Like you don't have that having that quality time with them without you on your phone or without your child on your phone. It's just simply a one-on-one conversation that um I'm looking around cafes and that's really hard to do for a lot of parents who sit around at cafes as their downtime, for example. And I know that bringing a mobile device is definitely something that's just so easy for a child to get distracted on, just to sort of
Yeah,
leave
true.
them for a bit. So how would you do that? How would you balance the need for your own time with the child being on screens too much?
Okay, so as a parent, sometimes we also need our own quality time with our phones, and it's okay to give them an understanding that for now, for an hour from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m., I need my own time, and you can being away from your kids to avoid them as having a secondhand screen time, so you can be on your room, and then for an hour keep your promises to be back to your children again, and for that duration, for that an hour, give them alternatives of what to do. So yeah, that's why actually I take the Montessori course, because it really helps me on providing other alternatives of screen time, because they'll really give them children of free exploration. Sometimes we have a lot of rules in our house, like don't touch this, don't touch that, because you might broke this, you might broke that. But then, yeah, we cannot turn back time.
Yeah.
We cannot, we cannot repeat the same childhood, but we always have our opportunity to control what they do, to supervise what they do.
No, that's totally true. And I think this sort of fits in. We've got a lot of responses from audience members, from listeners who have some questions for you as well. Um, how does screen time affect learning?
Screen time might affect learning if we don't have the strict timetable of when to access the digital devices for education purpose and for entertainment purpose. Sometimes when they're doing homework, they can access other website to entertain themselves. So we need to be for children, for especially those who are still in kindergarten and elementary school, we really need to be beside them when it's time to access internet for educational purposes, because we cannot control. They are very smart on in operating technology. They sometimes know how to open a new tab without we knowing that they're opening the new tab. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then we can ask them, what is your obstacle on doing your homework? What is something that might cause you sadness or other negative emotion at schools? Can I help you with that? Can I accompany you on doing what is difficult for you? That might help them to, okay, I can entertain myself by talking to my parents, by sharing what I feel to my parents, rather than finding any other happiness from internet.
Mhm. I think I definitely remember a time when that song Baby Shark came out.
Yeah,
It was so popular, and the amount of kids that knew just what to type. They knew to go to YouTube. They knew to go and type Baby Shark, and they were able to
yeah,
find it. And it amazes me how difficult a lot of adults find technology, but how easy it is for a 2-year-old to go and find the
yeah.
song.
So very easy to type it. Even my nephew, they don't know how to read, because they're still 3 years old. But it is very easy for them to press any button on the remote TV to access their favorite YouTube channel, like Cocomelon or something. Yeah,
It's amazing that they and I think that's perfect example as well. I think it's incredible to know that they know that it's that channel, that they
yes,
recognize
because
that.
true. Because if you still remember what I mentioned earlier about the eye-catching content
Mhm.
of digital devices, yeah, it's really can attract them. It's really can engage with their attention. That's why if it's too much for them. For example, how much is too much? More than an hour for them, for that kind of exposure, it will make them hard to focus on the real life objects because it's less colorful. Why it's very easy for them to remember. Okay, I don't know, for example, my nephew, I don't know how to write, I don't know how to read, but I know this is my favorite YouTube channel because I remember the color, because I remember the sound, I remember the clue, I remember the cues.
That's amazing. Like I it's just kids amaze me more and more the more times I'm around
Yeah,
them.
actually let's explain how big is their brain development during the first 5 years of their age by that kind of behavior. So if we can involve them to more real activities and something that other than digital devices, actually playing play-doh or simply just playing with the rain with the puddles, it's more uh, it's more towards the stimulation activities actually,
Mhm.
because all the bodies are involved. But when you are watching, it's just your eyes and your attention that plays role.
So is it like just to sort of sidetrack on there when it comes to that, like you're talking about the your nephew finding that show, knowing that it is. So what is the how do they know it's an eye-catching content without even knowing what the account does? I mean, do they are they able to understand what the content is, or is it just what the colors are?
If you're paying attention to like kids channel such as Cocomelon, Pink Fong, something like that, you can see that they always put a very bright color.
Yeah.
It's very different from real nature. When you go outside, you can just see green and blue, but when you see screen, you can see all the colors and everything is so bright. It's so eye-catching. It's That's why it explains why children toys always associated with colorful. Why kindergarten have a very colorful wallpaper,
Yeah.
because it can attract children's attention and it's easy for them to um, engage in activities which is provide that kind of stimulation. But it can be of an overload of stimulation if it's too bright.
Mhm. So do they actually know what content it is? So for example, you're talking about wallpaper. If there were giraffes on that wallpaper, for example, would they know, or would they just see it as a color?
At first they will just say that's something interesting,
Mhm.
but then the interest can be developed into something bigger when they wanna seek for that. The interesting, for example, they see there is a picture of a giraffe on a wallpaper, and they will develop their interest by first touching at the wallpaper. How is the texture? Oh, it is smooth. And then they will start to ask, what color is this? What animal is this? That is also works on watching a YouTube, for example. When they scrolling through a channel and they see something eye catching, it will attract their interest. And how it goes on the first step, they will click on it and they will say, oh, okay, this is interesting, and they will start to repeating the similar channels and so on and so on and so on.
Ah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. So what age is appropriate for allowing a child to go on a screen normally without you being there?
I cannot answer the exact age for that because even for teenagers, we really should supervise their access of
Mhm.
internet. But if you ask me, what year can I allow my kids to have their screen time? It's after 2 years.
Okay. So anytime before that, it's important to sort of build the real world.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
To stimulate all of their aspects.
Okay. So this comes into a really interesting question. There's a 7-year-old child at the moment. She's wondering, can we give a smartphone to our 7-year-old? If not, how should we explain the reason to him? If yes, how do we control his screen time?
Yes, you can give a screen time for a 7 years old, but then you need to have a strict schedule of that. So it depends on you as a parents. When is your best time to give them a screen time? Is it after dinner because it's the time you have a free time to assist them on using technologies? Then you can set it. Okay, after dinner 7 to 8, but after 8 p.m. it's time for bed. So no more screen time after then, and no screen time during meal time.
I
Everything about screen time can be discussed if you wanna spare your time to actively listening and to explain your perspective.
Okay, I think she means in a way, can I give him a smartphone? Like give him like he has his own phone.
Actually, I'm not, for me personally, I'm not recommending you to give them a personal smartphone for them to have by their own, because if you give them, okay, this is your own smartphone, they will think that, okay, I have an ownership of this gadget, so I can access it anytime because it's mine. It's just like they will think, okay, my hair is part of my body, so I have my uh, own choice to cut it short or to let it grow long. That can be works on phone as well. So if you want to give them a screen time, yes, but how about having one tablet for all family members, for all the kids? So okay, you need to take turns on accessing the tablet.
Mhm. So, in a way, I think 7-year-old doesn't have that sort of shouldn't have that responsibility of having his own phone. They
Yes.
can't handle that responsibility.
Yes, but you can teach them. For example, okay, how some of parents might ask, how about in emergency situation? For example, they are going to school and then they need to go home by their own self. They got lost. They need to contact their parents. If they don't have a phone, how can they do that?
Mhm.
Okay, this have a lot of pros and cons, because okay, if we think about that, that is also important. How if they got lost? But you can give other another option about that kind of condition. Okay, how about you remember um, emergency phone number? For example, your mom phone number or your dad phone number. This is my phone number. This is your dad phone number, and where they can find calling station, for example, or find help when they're in such situations. There
Mhm.
is a lot of option that you can offer. For example, okay, if you see a police station which the icon is which this color, and you can read this with the P as a first letter, okay, you can ask them for help, for example. Or if you see uh, other adult, you can ask them for help, how to ask help from older people is also important to be taught.
Mhm. Okay. So, even if maybe for like another scenario, for example, even if the child does have a phone, so if when they get home, is it acceptable to sort of leave it in a as soon as they get home, they sort of leave it on the kitchen table, for example, being like, "Okay, you're out and you can have the phone for emergencies, but when you're home, it has to be in one spot."
Yes, I really suggest that the tablet should be in one spot that everyone can access it, and it should provide with explanation why it should be placed there. For
Okay.
example, because it's for your own safety, because it's out of your screen time schedule. And why it's out of your screen time schedule? Because you can do any other activities other than doing screen time, and yeah, something like that.
Okay, so the smartphone, even for emergencies, you wouldn't recommend it.
Uh, that's why it is important to have just a cellular phone only to call
Yeah.
at home, a phone call in case of emergency.
Okay. So how would she explain to the child that they can't have their own phone?
Okay, you can start with the responsibilities of having their own smartphone. For 7 years old, you can start with you can see that it's very easy for you to receive any content which I would not recommend you to watch that. Why? Because sometimes it's hard for you to understand why this kind of behavior is forbidden. You might be exposed to aggression content, which is I don't want you to be aggressive towards your friend or towards your sister. Why? Because how would you feel if I yell on you? How would you feel if I hit you? How would you feel if I have this kind of behavior towards you? And then let them express their opinion. After that, you can respond with, okay, that's what you feel, and your feeling might be felt towards other people. You don't want that, right? Because it's feel uncomfortable, and people can feel uncomfortable too. I cannot be beside you 24/7, and I wish you to always have a positive emotions, as well as we wish other people also have that kind of emotions, and we can prevent it by not having a smartphone for your own because of that kind of example.
Okay. I think that's a really good point. Just sort of the emotional, if they don't have they have too much responsibility if they're able to sort of decide
Yeah,
for themselves.
yeah, and it's hard for you. We can explain that it's hard for them to filter it, but I can help you to filter it
Yeah.
because I have more knowledge on reading. I can read the content. Meanwhile, you still have a lack of capability on reading the content or on identify what is the problems on this content, and it might harm you.
I think that's a really good conversation. And I think just being open and being honest with your child
Yes.
and the concerns that you have as a parent would be would definitely have some sort of influence as to how they view technology as well.
Yes, because the key point is they can understand our value and we can understand how they perceive the world.
Mhm. No, for sure. Um, Going into, thank you so much for answering all those questions. We are done with the questions from audiences. Now, I'd love to move on and talk about your practices when it comes to screen time. And
Right.
so, what is the practice that you do to deal with your screen time?
My own screen time or children's screen time?
Your own personal screen time.
Hey, my own personal screen time. For example, I set a detox social media time for myself, and it should be today after the podcast.
Okay.
Yeah. So, for example, I have my own time for social media detox because sometimes I cannot filter what people post and it might affect my emotions. I cannot control people to not posting this on that. And sometimes I start to, for example, I start to compare myself with others. Okay, why people are having that kind of achievement and I'm still doing this? Am I worth it?
Mhm.
We cannot control that, but I can always control myself for what I can access. So sometimes I put on a social media detox period, and during that time I'm doing, I call it a healthy journey, so doing yoga, for example, and have a journaling time. And then when I back on the social media again, I feel more fresh, and I can see what I saw before that that is can disturb my emotion. I can see it with more positive point of view.
So that's definitely coming into the next question with what are three good things about this practice? You've spoken about coming back and being a bit more refreshed. What other two? Can you think of another two positive results that come with sort of doing a detox.
Yeah, it creates my bond more with my real social connections,
Mhm.
because I tend to go outside and meet with my friend in real situation, talk to them with a face-to-face interaction, so it creates more of bonding. And I think it's just can function as a value sharing. So the more I discuss in real life, the more I can understand a lot of perspective, a lot of value. So I see it's just like a window through the other world.
No, that sounds really good. That sounds really nice. It sounds like I need to do a detox very soon as well. um, so what are some challenges that occur when you go through a social media detox?
Sometimes it's really hard for me to keep my hand away from opening the social media for like Instagram. It's really hard, but then when I face that kind of challenge, I try to um, replace that needs with the journaling time. So I write my feelings, I express on, sometimes I write it on a book, or I sometimes also do digital journaling. I write what I feel, why I really want to see what people post, because I feel bored. And then when I recognize that emotion, I can give myself alternatives of what to do when I'm bored.
No, that's really true because yeah, I think
Yeah.
me and a lot of other people they go through they just go on social media just when they're feeling bored, just to sort of waste time and that kind of thing. And no, I think there are definitely that's definitely something positive. Journaling, I love journaling as well, so that sort of resonates with me personally as well.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
I love journaling. It's especially
That's
during the
nice to hear that
last
there is other people who love journaling,
it's
because most of my friends doesn't not like journaling.
oh no. No, this I hope this will definitely tell them that they should start because I think it definitely helped over the last 2 years as well when like COVID and lockdown and you couldn't really do much and now
Yeah,
yeah,
true.
you didn't want to spend all of the time on social media, all the time watching TV. So, yeah, journaling is definitely something that that's really helped me personally as well, for sure.
Yes.
How often do you go through a detox?
Um. Actually, before this, I just recently active back on social media for less than a month, and before that, I was doing social media detox for like 2 or 3 months. But
Oh,
I don't know for this next social detox how long it will last, because this is just my second time.
mhm.
I never did that before in my life.
How do
And
you
then I
get the
found it.
motivation? Because honestly, I like I get so bored and I sort of just fall back into the same habits of checking Instagram or checking TikTok and those kind of things. Like, how do you get the motivation to sort of, okay, for 2 months, I'm not going to go on social media at all?
Actually, it's not on my plan that I won't touch my social media for 2 months. It just happened.
Oh,
Because
okay.
I start to feel that when I can recognize my state at that moment, when I can recognize my emotion and identify what do I feel and what do I really need, I just find that I can connect to the world easier. Meanwhile, accessing social media, it's just an instant way for us to calm ourselves, just like to calm a kid.
No, I think that's a really good point, and yeah, I definitely need to do a detox now over the next couple of months. Um, so how do you think that this practice impacts your perception in life?
I just feel like I cannot turn back time, like I mentioned earlier.
Mhm.
Um, I cannot achieve things that I'm achieving today if I spend my past time on accessing something that won't bring benefit for me. I'm not saying that accessing social media will harm you or will not bring you benefit, because I also learn a lot of knowledge and I can see the world through just a very tiny of screen. But sometimes it make us forget how we value ourselves, because sometimes we compare ourselves to the other. Sometimes we feel overwhelmed of people's uh, posts on social media, and we just need our own time to value ourselves more, to see a positive side on ourselves. And if you achieve that, you can achieve a bigger uh, accomplishment other
Yeah.
than that. So yeah, I see that as a investing time.
No, that's actually a really good thing. How do you what other activities did you do while you're going through the detox?
Sometimes I did yoga, but if I'm very tired of doing yoga, i I really like to make something like a poster educational content. So if I'm really bored, I ask myself, what do I interest about today? Okay, for example, I feel like I interest about a screen time topic. How about if I browse that about that, and then I start to list what should I learn, the details about the topic. And that's what I did during my spare time.
Oh wow, so you educated yourself in the process a little bit more as well.
Yeah.
So would you recommend this practice to everyone, and who would you love to target the recommendation towards?
Actually, I would like to target my recommendation to all people, to everyone, because yeah, we cannot deny that we spend our time more on social media nowadays. Sometimes I think like, okay, I spend my time on Instagram just for like 2 hours in a day, but when I check the login activity, it shows that I access my Instagram for like 6 hours per day. On wow, that's exceed the limit.
No,
So yeah.
yeah, that's not bad. I've done a lot longer than that over the last I think the last couple of months especially. Um yeah, six hours isn't bad, but at the same time it's I can definitely see how much of time that does take up.
Oh,
Um
so you did more than 6 hours.
yeah, yeah, I have done more than 6 hours on it.
Like a blur line when we are accessing a social media, like a blur time. We
Yeah.
forget the time,
Yeah, you waste it's
and it just passed
yeah,
by.
exactly. You waste so much time on social
Yeah,
media because it's the easiest for me, it's like the easiest thing. It's the
yes,
and because my parents I'm older than kids now, so my parents no longer have a say, which means it's all on me to make sure that I'm not going over the amount of time that I set for myself,
yeah.
but
So you
it's
manage your own time.
yes, and I think that's worse. I actually think that's worse than when I was a kid and my parents had
Yes.
control over how much I watched. So yeah, so based on your experience when it comes to detox, do you have any other recommendations of a practice that could be combined with this to deal with screen time?
I might suggest people to see professional help. For example, like you can go to a doctor to check your eyes, because like me, I didn't recognize that I have a problem on my eyes, and I need to wear glasses because uh, I exposed to screen time too much.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely what my optometrist told me as well. I think that's very relatable. Um, no, I think that's a really good recommendation to sort of go as well, especially when over the last couple of years when you're stuck on social media, you're stuck on a screen or something, and not being able to do anything else. No, I think that's a really good practice. Um, Now there comes to the part of an open mic where we give you a chance to talk about anything that you are interested in, anything that you would like to share with an audience. It sort of gives you the space and the floor to do so. So, yeah, anything that you would like to talk about.
Maybe I would like to talk about how the pandemic babies interact through their social connection, because they're like being caged at the home during this pandemic era. So all the pandemics, maybe when they see the other world, I found some videos on TikToks and Instagram. The parents invite them to go to the mall and go to the shopping area, and they, even when they see uh and only a mannequin, they will just stare, and it's like, what is this? Is this a real people? They cannot distinguish the difference between the real people and just a mannequin. And this is like a very general phenomena that we can found nowadays, because of the uh, what do you call it again, the social limitation,
Mhm.
the rules
Yeah.
of going outside. Yeah, the isolation. And I just want to say that that's okay. It's just let them time to observe their world. If you see them like confusing human being when they see a real world, that's fine. It's a time for them to learn what is the real world. It needs time to make them understand that, okay, this is real communication. I need to pay attention of the body language of people's facial expression, and this is my time to meet other new people outside my parents and my sibling. So don't worry, that's why. Because I receive a lot of question about that. Is that okay? Why my kid, when they are going outside home, they will be just like staring at the other people? That's okay. It's an observational learning.
No, I think that's a really good point. Like it's so hard to get the child back out into society when they've never even been in. They've never
Yeah,
really seen how the world is. So even
and
seeing
sometimes it
things in
might
real
scare
life.
them.
Pardon?
Sometimes it might scare them.
Yeah. No.
Like, will these people hurt me?
Yeah, exactly. Especially when it comes to things that are really big, that are a lot bigger than them. And sort of just see like a car, for example. Like they see a car actually driving by. It's not on a screen. It's sitting right in front of them. Like that could be such a impact on their understanding of everything.
Yes, true. I agree with that
Yeah.
opinion.
Um, well, thank you so much, Athena, for coming in to join me here today. It was really, actually was a really interesting conversation. It was really interesting to talk to you about this. Um, what final piece of advice do you have for parents?
Okay, the I might say that there's a lot of thing to say actually, but then the practice of screen time, especially for children, made me realize that the habits are built from home, and an early age is the foundation for the growth they will achieve at a later age. And the screen time practice made me realize that habits are built from home, even for myself, because yeah, what I uh, do at home will affect on how I behave outside home. And early age is a foundation for the growth they will achieve at a later age. And we cannot turn back time, but we can always optimize present time. So this actually a reminder for myself, and it can be a reinforcement to get up when facing challenges about screen time, even for myself, not only when raising child and assisting children.
Oh, well, that's actually a really great piece of advice. Thank you so much for coming on and coming to joining me and talking about this. And it was really, really interesting. And I really hope that um, that the guests listening today, audience listening today, would find this as beneficial as I know most of you will. And yeah, thank you so much for joining me, Athena.
Thank you also for inviting me. I really appreciate and I really honor this moment. Do you mind if I take a screen capture of this recording?
Oh yeah, sure, go for it.
Okay, I will start to count. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope the audience, I hope everyone here enjoyed listening today and watching it. And definitely, if you have, definitely check out our Instagram and our social medias on the bottom or on the left, on the right hand side, depending on where you're listening. And I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your time. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Raising Parents, the Parenting Science Insights podcast, produced by the Parenting Science Labs, a division of LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. More episodes are available from 10 life management perspectives and can be found by searching LMSL on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and other podcasting apps available on your smartphone. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, share, and subscribe to our channel so that other people can find it and we can continue to provide quality content. More of our work can be found on our website at pa.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Dina Sargeant, and thanks for tuning in.